pasture here. Welcome to my little corner of the backyard. I'm inviting you into the space with me as I get a little vulnerable and share a story with you. And I hope in doing so that it illuminates something for your experience. The themes I'm going to share have really been with me through most of my life, but the lessons have provided so much radical transformation for really my mind, my heart, my spirit, and I just wanted to share that with you. Stories hold truth and remembrance, but in sharing our stories with others, it can provide healing for someone who receives them. So without further ado, I would like to share my story with you. This is AIVA and the Wolves. When I was young, I had a dream, but this dream was actually a nightmare. I had a recurring nightmare, also called a night terror, and it was very traumatizing for me as a child. So here's the dream. Imagine a white space, and from my point of view perspective, I'm actually looking at myself inside of this white space, sitting in the foreground of the space. Then all of a sudden, a door appears in the far back left corner of the space, and in rush a pack of wolves. And then they surround me. It's all happening so fast. And then I wake up. That's the dream. And I always wake up terrified, paralyzed with fear. And the dream actually reoccurred for a while. And, you know, of course, I wake up at this point that the wolves are surrounding me, and in my young 7-year-old mind, I believe I'm being eaten alive. So this went on for quite some time, but then after a while, they did stop. The nightmares did stop. Naturally, this didn't sit well with me, but I wasn't of a curious mind to seek dream interpretation. As I got older, I clung to my fascination with the cat species, small cats, big cats, wild cats. I loved them all and had no interest in associating with dogs or coyotes or wolves or other canine species, and for good reason. You know, this dream left me fearful. But just when I thought that the dreams of yesteryear had faded away, the wolves found me again, you know, in later stages of my life, and actually taught me a really profound lesson about how to illuminate fears, how to reframe perspective, and reclaim your narrative. I will say that weirdly enough, I attracted 2 Virgo lovers in my life who independently of each other referred to themselves as wolves. It's just a really interesting thing to note. Still trying to figure that one out. Fast forward years later, while I was living in London as a signed recording artist, I would spend many late night hours up in my tiny Camden flat, researching about animals and the presence of animals as spirit messengers. And then I was also really deeply interested in the mythology of the Mayan jaguar gods. I don't know why, it was just what I was into at the time. But then one day, like while on a really deep Google dive, a Google search, I discovered the term shadow self for the first time. And yes, the wolf showed up again, reappeared. What I read in this article actually really provided a life-altering lesson. The wolf was presented as the shadow balance to my favorite animal of interest at the time, the jaguar. So for those of us who know the terms shadow self, shadow work, or for those who don't know, recognizing the shadow self within really invites us to embrace the darker half of ourselves, the darker aspects of ourselves, all of the unwanted or unfavorable qualities that we work so hard to try to repress and push down within ourselves. But these are aspects, as we know, that inherently make us whole. so I just found it really interesting when I came across this article, and the wolf was really presented as the shadow self to the jaguar energy. Because as we know in this dream that I had as a child, I was left with fear after being basically eaten alive by these wolves. So it really had me stop and take a look at that dream again. I took that opportunity to really sit with myself and kind of go back into that dream, because of course I'd have these wolves come up also through these people in my life, and I hadn't really taken a moment to further examine the dream or try to interpret it. But as I was doing all of this research about animal wisdom and animal messengers and medicine and the presence of animal spirits in our lives, especially at that time, I thought it deserved a closer look. And I thought at that moment it was time for me to re-examine and take a look at things that I was trying to push down within myself and understand the deeper meaning. So, I really realized that I had internalized these fears that were brought on by this dream, as really a fixed narrative in my story. I had really made up in my mind that I had been eaten alive and that I had met some really unfortunate and untimely fate in my story even back then. And I think that this was stored within me, and I carried on that narrative in my journey for a long time. I had really subconsciously planted this seed in my mind and in my spirit that tragedy was going to be the recurring theme of my life. Call it fate, call it karma. Instead of facing the deeper truth of that dream at the time, my younger self only knew to dismiss and disassociate. But ultimately, doing that, it only kind of influenced my shadow self to come forward and really act out in untamed ways. In some way, I had believed I had been marked by tragedy, so I was just gonna go around and act like this tragic figure. And looking back, I realized I was doing that a lot, especially through my adolescent years. Let's not go too deep into that. The more I was reading about the shadow self, the more I realized that my shadow self was currently living in a real life nightmare, and one that I was kind of allowing myself to operate in. One I believed I was probably magnetizing. I was attracting situations and people into my life that were also scary. And that's when I really started my dark night of the soul phase part of my journey. That was starting to play out as I was discovering and doing more research about what shadow work was, and getting to know my shadow self as well. Things couldn't really get any worse than they were at the time. So I just allowed myself to surrender. I just surrendered to really the alchemy that doing shadow work can provide. I was just like, okay, we're here now in this part of the journey. This is what we're in for now. Something really, really major clicked, or should I say, howled for me at that moment in time. So in going back into this dream and revisiting this nightmare, this night terror that I used to have about these wolves, something was really illuminated for me. As I looked closer into this dream, I realized that I didn't actually know how the dream ended. And I really thought about it. I'm like, wait a second. What if these wolves weren't coming in to eat me? What if I wasn't meeting an untimely fate? What if they were coming in to raise me, to guide me, to teach me their ways, to initiate me into their pack? That was a really powerful shift in the way I was viewing myself and my situation. That was super powerful for me. And then it kind of forced me to take a look at the wolf and what messages were coming through for me personally in that dream, let's first talk about how the wolf is a tragically misunderstood creature on the whole, right? How can we not revere their keen sense of intelligence, their sacred wisdom, being so deeply in tune with nature and the ways of the wild? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's because we've forgotten our own inner wild one. We've so lost touch with being so deeply in harmony and in tune with nature and the ways of the wild. That's something I feel I relate the most to, being misunderstood. I have felt like a misunderstood creature my whole entire life, and so I really started to feel, this compassion and this empathy for this creature that I had so internally feared for so long because I thought that it had brought harm to me. Now I just wanted to love it and to really just be a part of its path. I've had lots of different friendships, been through lots of different circles of friendships. A lot of the times, even if I identify with certain groups of people or certain individuals, I feel like even when I would try to present myself or try to make friendships with people, I'd feel really rejected, or like people would misunderstand my intentions. A lot of ideas that I would have would be rejected, when presenting them at these tables that it just appears that I wasn't even invited to sit in the first place. So that's the story there. Later in my life, I would learn that invitations are the key to my success, that they are the success strategy that really works for me. And this is in regards to the human design system, which is an experiment that I am practicing with in my life right now and that I so feel seen by. Another way I relate to the wolf is I'm a very much community-oriented and social creature. I think it's really the one thing in my life that I desire the most is to be a part of a group or be a part of a team or some kind of organization that feels like a chosen family. We all desire to be seen by someone or valued by something that we contribute our energies to, and to feel like we're meant to be somewhere. And that is just something that really drives me and is really a constant theme in my life. But like the wolf, I'm a highly independent person as well. I grew up as an only child, and I actually really like and prefer to spend long periods in solitude, so that I can really recenter, reground, refocus, and recharge my energies, because I suffer from people fatigue and burnout, and I get drained. As an empath especially, I get drained from being around other people, especially when those energies are not really mixing well with my frequencies. So, but in my heart of hearts, nothing lights me up more than being seen, accepted, and recognized, and really invited into a group. I love that. That really is what makes me so happy and so joyful, and it is really the one thing I desire the most. I am in essence a pack creature. Just saying. In the past and throughout my life, I have felt this sense of belonging. From grade school, on the playground, playing with different groups of friends, to different jobs I've taken over the years, to different places I've lived in my life. I have had little senses of communities. I've even joined a couple bands here and there, and I felt, accepted and like I was a part of something. A lot of those situations were temporary, so I think right now I'm just leaving myself open to more of that recognition and those invitations, and to see where the place for me is, where is going to be my next home base, and who am I going to be building and creating with for this next chapter of my life. I'm also, recognizing that going back into that wolf dream, that maybe those people are just meant to find me. Maybe I'm not so meant to like go out and like find my pack. Maybe they come to me. You know, maybe that is the key also to being a human design projector is for me to wait to be recognized and invited. Honestly, I feel like I've been licking my wounds for quite some time now. I mean, I faced a lot of adversity over the first 30 years of my life. And, you know, it's no doubt impacted the way I have been able to show up in my fullness, unapologetically. And most notably when I had an opportunity to go overseas and sign a contract as a recording artist, you know, I found myself shrinking a lot. I found myself kind of holding on to a lot of like a fear-based narrative that I didn't realize I'd been carrying my whole life. You know, I've taken a lot of things to heart, a lot of unfortunate circumstances that have come my way, situations that I've been in. You know, I've overstayed at the pity parties and the heartbreak hotels of life. You know, I've shame spiraled a lot in the wake of failures. But right now, and more recently in the recent years, I'm really starting to appreciate the blessing of things not working out. You know, I realized that maybe it was for my protection. Maybe whatever situations that were happening were actually showing me something. There was a deeper truth and a deeper meaning, you know, within the situations that will ultimately reveal itself. And provide some healing and some transformation. You know, we're not meant to stay the same. We're not meant to have things be easy in life. But having that keen sense of awareness and intuition, which is another shining quality of the wolf. You know, they're highly instinctual and highly intuitive, and they use their intuition for survival. And I realize I've been the same way. You know, maybe things not working out in the moments, maybe I acted out, or maybe I reacted to things in the moment, obviously because I would have been wounded or hurt by situations that were threatening to my life. But I'm starting to realize that there were moments when I was using my intuition and I was using my instinct to protect myself, you know, and that coming out of these situations, there was a reason for it. And thank goodness, you know, my memory always serves me. I'm able to recall things and from a different perspective, look at situations in a different way. Just like with the wolf dream. Revisiting the wolf dream that I had as a child, you know, really offered this new perspective from my life. And, you know, it really just allowed me to reclaim my narrative. It helps me to, moving forward, face any kind of fears or the illusion of fears presenting themselves in a different way, in a way where I can really choose to see how I want things to go. You know, even if something is arousing some kind of negative feeling within me, I can choose to look at the situation and just identify what needs to be worked through, worked out, you know, what maybe needs to be healed if I'm being triggered by something. You know, there's an opportunity for me to take a deeper look at what is actually happening, but not take it on as fear, not take it on as something that I'm deserving of, even something that is meant to be part of my narrative. Is, you know, I used to just think that me being eaten by these wolves when I was younger meant that my life was meant for tragedy. But no, you know, it was showing there was a deeper meaning to that. You know, and changing my mindset around fear ultimately changed the trajectory of what I was moving on to co-create, you know, with the help of my guides. You know, so I no longer see situations, whether awake or in dream time, as working against me. Everything is now being divinely orchestrated for my highest good, even if things seem difficult or challenging. You know, I have the ability to work through them. You know, the first 30 some years of my life has proven that I can literally get through anything. Trust me, I've been through a lot, because the truth was, like, I didn't know that the dream was ending in a fatality. All I remember is how things were being perceived at that time. The illusion of an unfortunate fate was just a conclusion that was quickly made and accepted by my younger self. And where my imagination led me from that point. But even if that's what happened, it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter. What matters is what I choose to believe moving forward. The thoughts that I have about myself and my reality, that is what is creating and attracting everything from this point forward. I do believe that revisiting the dream, and changing the perspective of what I thought I saw, actually helped to heal, years of trauma that was stored within me and stored in my psyche and in my energy, and it really helped to deprogram a lot of the negative scripts that I was playing out in my head, and ultimately what I was putting out there and attracting into my physical world as well. This process and this phase of my life, is a very solitary one. It paves the solitary path, but the lonely path is, being alone is not a lonely path. It's, and it's not an unfamiliar practice for me particularly. I grew up as an only child. I do a lot of solo traveling. I've moved around by myself a lot, so like I'm used to doing things solo. But I have the advantage of experience and endurance and self-awareness and protection on my side as I now move forward with this new mindset. Now I have the wolf as my trusted guide, and I know how to move through life fearlessly, and fiercely into the unknown. Like, I'm not afraid of the dark anymore, and also reversing the perception of being misunderstood, hated or feared by other people is actually my responsibility. It's my responsibility to understand that everybody is not going to like me. I'm not for everybody, and that's okay, because not everybody is for me either. And that is perfectly fine. That's life. The trick for me is to not internalize this as self-hatred, or have it turn into self-pity. That's poisonous for me. The answer is always self-love and owning my truth and knowing who I am. The more others hate, the more I love myself, and have to accept myself and offer compassion to myself and to my shadow as well. I have to open my awareness more to also recognizing those who recognize me and those who show up for me and who have shown up for me, and be really grateful for that, because all of those people, they are part of my pack. We might not all be in the same place physically right now, but spiritually we are bonded. We are each other's chosen family, near or far. There have been people who are still here in my heart and in my spirit, who I know who I am, and I know that they see me. I know that they recognize me, and I just can't be any more grateful. Just like with the wolf dream, my pack will come to me. Sometimes it's all about me just showing up and being myself, and they will come. I definitely recognize that in the past I let too many of the wrong ones into my aura field, into my energy field, into my mind, into my heart, and let too many people access to my energy that didn't value me, didn't respect me, didn't appreciate me, and I learned this one red flag too late. In doing that, I realized that was, sometimes a means of survival, but I wouldn't entertain that today. Like, we're not doing that. We are not doing that. It took me a while to really admit this truth to myself, that even as a means of survival, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. the right ones will show up, and these are people that I will continue to align my energies with. I definitely realize who the proverbial wolves in sheep's clothing are, and I've been a lot more clear-sighted about who the real ones are. I do crave a close-knit community, but what's more important to me are quality, balanced relationships and balanced connections. This is becoming really clear to me as a 4/6 projector in the human design system, and more specifically for my type as a 4/6 opportunist role model. I'm meant to be, as a projector, meant to be a guide and to serve and to help others. But as a 4/6, as an opportunist role model, my success and my opportunities come through my direct community. Essentially, my tribe helps me thrive. I'm meant to be elevated and to be of service to my immediate community. So that's kind of what I mean when I'm trying to still find who and where that core community will be based. But for right now, I am really just kind of on this kind of solitary lone wolf path right now. I always say I go where I'm wanted and I stay where I'm needed. To wrap that all up, I can just say I really feel like the wolf has been walking with me for my whole life, and I just didn't really realize it until later in my life, as I started to really, look at the characteristics and, the wisdom of the wolf, and what it's been really silently whispering to me maybe my whole life. I really feel like the wolf has been walking beside me my whole journey, since they showed themselves to me in the dream, since my pack presented themselves. It's like, we're gonna find you, we will find you again, don't you worry, we're gonna show up throughout your life and be here. I feel like the wolf has been watching me from the shadows, keeping an eye on me, whispering words of wisdom, and sometimes wandering off to remind me of, the strength I have in solitude, and just to trust that, that I will always know how to find my way, using my instinct and my intuition. But the greatest lesson has been not to fear myself, and just to love myself and be unapologetically fierce and fearless with how I show up in my fullness and in my truth. Because when I unleash my inner wild one and use my voice or my ow, I can illuminate and awaken a deeper truth within others. Thank you for listening. That was my story. I hope it reached you, touched you, and illuminated a truth for your experience. Sending y'all loving vibrations until next time. Give me a howl in the comment section if this resonated with your experience. Here's an energy alchemy practice you can use for further reflection.